Hi, everyone. My name is Celia Hamilton. I'm the Strategic Planning Manager for the Social Biz User Group. Thanks for tuning in. With me today is Russ Maher, President and founder of Q Diligence. Russ is an IBM Champion and a developer who's been working in the Notes Domino world since 1993. He's also an XPages expert, having developed and deployed XPages used in several corporate legal environments. Hi, Russ. How are you? Thanks for joining.
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
So tell me a bit about Q Diligence. You're running that as a service using XPages in the cloud, and I know one of the major concerns with going to the cloud is security. So how do you address that with your application?
So Q Diligence is actually a service that helps publicly traded companies gather the information from their board of directors that they are required to disclose in their public proxies. And that information that they gather from these directors is pretty private information. It's typically going to describe their family relationships, their stock holdings, compensation, in a variety of ways. So as you can imagine, a company is very protective of their directors' information.
Right.
Of course, and if you're a director, you're going to be protective of that.
Right.
So our service, we basically, our mantra is security first, convenience second. And so the way we've handled that ever since the beginning was we essentially made sure that we were running on dedicated hardware, which we've actually been using SoftLayer hardware ever since 2007. But we make sure we've used dedicated hardware, and we actually did a long, exhaustive look at ways to host the application in the cloud. And basically we quickly figured out that dedicated hardware was important, making sure that we use the technology that's built into Domino and XPages to prevent access to the data from outside forces is kind of important. So basically, we start at the at the provider, the hardware level, and kind of go all the way through the application development cycle and those kinds of things. We do a lot of testing, web application vulnerability testing. We certainly do network vulnerability testing, PCI scanning. So those are the kinds of things that we use to ensure that the application itself is secure and that that we don't run into any problems. It's an ongoing process. I mean, it is one of those things where it takes constant vigilance because the attacks change all the time.
Yeah, they're out ahead of us. We have to keep up with them.
Definitely, and that's one thing that we found. I think, we always thought. And we still don't have any problems with it at all. Domino is a fantastically secure platform to begin with, and frankly, we wouldn't host this application on anything other than it. So we're very satisfied with the security infrastructure that's built into Domino and the XPages security that's built on top of that. So that's fine. But then when you get out into the just the web application development world, you discover it's a whole big giant world out there. Like you said, they're out there, they're ahead of us all the time.
Yep.
And there's bad people out there that want access to whatever kinds of information they just want. And it's a constant battle. It's actually surprising when we look at our log files. It's a regular occurrence for somebody to just point a script at our servers and try all kinds of login activity. And you think, when you start this off, you don't think, well, that's going to happen on any kind of regular basis. Who would want to try to attack this? But it happens a very, very regular amount of time.
Interesting. And how can a developer find out more about OWASP vulnerabilities? It's obviously something that's important to any developer, regardless of whether they're in XPages or another platform.
Oh, definitely. So that's, once you get outside the Domino world, you discover all these, again, web application vulnerabilities, et cetera. And just a very short amount of research will lead you to OWASP, which actually stands for the Open Web Application Security Project, and they can be found at OWASP.org. But basically, they're kind of the arbiter of all things web vulnerability, and so they have a really fantastic list. They call it the Top 10 list. It was actually updated, I think, last year. So they had a 2010 Top 10 vulnerability list, and now they've got a 2013 Top 10 vulnerability list. But that is the go-to place. If you're really looking for the things that you need to secure against in your application, that is the starting point to do that. And what's nice about that is all of the tool sets pretty much make scanning against that top 10 list the baseline for security vulnerability testing. So, for instance, every once in a while we'll have a customer pull our name from a hat and say, well, hey, Q Diligence, you guys are the lucky ones this year. You get to go through our security review process. And so the results that we will get back from their scanning will target specifically, to begin with, the OWASP OWASP top 10. So if you can secure your application against the top 10, you're in pretty good stead towards securing your whole application.
And is there something really simple but often overlooked that XPages developers can do to lock down their applications?
Yeah, definitely. So I actually have three things in this kind of a space. The first thing is, number one, if you haven't implemented SSL and you're doing a web application, you need to implement SSL. And so, just you can go and get a cheap certificate, and if you've got a variety of ways to do it, you've got security devices that are out in front of you, that's fine. If you just have firewalls in front of your Domino server, just implement SSL. If you're using the IBM HTTP server, you can install SSL there. But deploy SSL, I don't know how often that's overlooked. Mm-hmm. It should never be overlooked. So SSL, especially these days, is definitely something. And if you want to go a little bit farther, you need to make sure that you're encrypting just using the built-in encryption that Domino has to encrypt the network traffic between servers. So, if you do that, that's the big thing. But after that, there's a couple of simple things that you might want to take a look at. The first one is if you have implemented SSL, you want to take a look at the strict transport security HTTP header. And what that does is it's an opt-in mechanism that allows browsers that support it to make sure that if there is SSL available and the browser supports SSL, that all of the communication is only done over SSL, which is kind of nice. It's a way to force SSL for the browser to support it. The second thing is clickjacking, and clickjacking is a big kind of a very, very prevalent vulnerability. And so you can use the HTTP header called X-frame options. And it doesn't take anything at all to implement an HTTP header, and now you've protected yourself for the most part against clickjacking from your application. So people are not going to be able to kind of hijack your customers clicking in your application to make them go to someplace else, maybe a site that totally mimics your site and then asks them to provide their bank information, that kind of thing. So those are the three things: SSL, strict transport security, and then X-frame options. Those are fairly easy to implement. And if you're not doing them, you really ought to be.
That's great. Great advice. So those are my questions, and thanks for taking the time to answer them, Russ. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Celia.
And thanks to our listeners. Don't forget to check out socialbizug.org. It's a user group community built entirely on connections, Domino, and XPages technologies, and is built for IBM Notes and Domino administrators and developers. Membership's completely free, so sign up today. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter at SocialBizUserGroup.